air at St. Jude's Institute of Medical Excellence didn't smell like pine or mountain mist, despite its remote location deep within the fog-drenched Oak Haven Valley. It smelled of ozone, sterile floor cleaner, and something metallic, the faint, persistent scent of blood. The girl in the glass shell, Ellora Vance, was a quiet anomaly. She was strikingly beautiful in a way that felt accidental. Her eyes were the color of rain, and her presence was as soft as a whisper, while the other students, scions of medical dynasties, spent their nights at the Pulse, a loud local bar. Ellora lived for the silence. Her life was a clockwork of gentle habits. The morning ritual, a video call with her parents whose voices were her only tether to sanity. The sanctuary, a corner booth at the Grinding Bean, a tiny cafe where she sipped black tea and read poetry. The inner circle, her only friends Kyle and Miri, two brilliant, socially awkward nerds who protected her from the harsh glare of social hierarchy. But Ellora had a secret that made medical school a living purgatory: hemophobia. The mere sight of a paper cut made her vision swim. The thought of a cadaver made her lungs seize. She wanted to heal, but she was terrified of the machinery of life. The wolves of St. Jude's, to the elite circle, led by a charismatic sociopath named Julian and a jealous heiress named Chloe. Ellora's beauty and her refusal to join their debauchery was an insult. They tormented her with surgical precision. The accident. Chloe tripped in the cafeteria, drenching Ellora's white coat in beet juice that looked sickeningly like arterial spray. Ellora fainted on the spot to the sound of rhythmic, mocking laughter. The locker. They replaced her textbooks with jars of formaldehyde-soaked organs stolen from the lab. The isolation. They spread rumors that she was a corpse vessel, cold, empty, and better off dead. The night in the cold room, the prank was Julian's idea. During a late afternoon anatomy session in the Goliath Wing, the college's state-of-the-art morgue, the group waited until the professor stepped out. They cornered Ellora in the back of the walk-in freezer where the John Does were kept. "You need to get used to the roommates, Ellora," Julian hissed, shoving her inside. The heavy steel door slammed shut. The magnetic seal hissed. They laughed, intending to let her out in an hour. But then came a distraction, an impromptu party, a flurry of drugs, and a blackout that lasted until the following morning. Ellora was forgotten. Inside the morgue, the temperature was a constant 4 degrees Celsius. The lights flickered and died. She was alone in the dark with 12 stainless steel slabs. For hours, she screamed until her vocal cords frayed. Then, the silence of the dead began to seep into her. The morning after. The next morning, the class gathered outside the Goliath Wing. Julian was hung over, a faint prickle of guilt hitting him as he remembered the girl in the freezer. Professor Thorne unlocked the heavy doors, his voice booming about the sanctity of the human vessel. The students filed in, shivering as the cold mist rolled out from the morgue. "Today," Thorne began, "we examine the musculature of the upper—" He stopped. The entire class froze. The center table, which had held a fresh cadaver for the morning's lecture, was transformed. Ellora wasn't cowering in a corner. She was perched atop the steel table, squatting like a gargoyle over the body of a middle-aged man. Her white lab coat was gone. She sat in her silk camisole, her skin now a translucent porcelain blue. The scene was a nightmare rendered in red. The cadaver's left arm had been crudely detached at the shoulder, the bone gnawed white. Ellora held the forearm in both hands, her face buried in the cold gray muscle. She wasn't crying, she was chewing. As the professor dropped his scalpel tray with a deafening clang, Ellora slowly turned her head. Her eyes, once soft and fearful, were now wide, glassy, and predatory. A thick, dark smear of congealed blood coated her chin and chest. She didn't look afraid of death anymore. She looked like she had finally invited it in. "I was so hungry," she whispered, her voice a wet, gravelly rasp. But the fear tasted better than the meat. She took a massive, wet bite of the cold bicep, staring directly at Julian. She didn't blink. She didn't gag. She just smiled, a jagged red grin that promised she would never be bullied again, because now she knew exactly what everyone was made of. The aftermath was not a rescue. It was a contagion of terror. While the professor collapsed and students scrambled over one another to escape the morgue, Ellora remained seated on her grim throne. She didn't move until the campus security arrived, and even then, she didn't struggle. She simply licked her fingers clean with a rhythmic, cat-like devotion. The institutional cover-up St. Jude's was too wealthy to succumb to a scandal. The incident was scrubbed. Ellora's parents were told she had a psychotic break due to the pressure of medical school. They were barred from seeing her, told she was in a high-security psychiatric wing of the Associated Hospital. But Ellora wasn't in a ward. She was in a laboratory. The board of directors realized that Ellora Vance hadn't just snapped. She had evolved. Her hemophobia had inverted into a physiological dependency. Her body temperature had dropped to a permanent 33 degrees, and her white blood cell count was off the charts. She was the hospital's most fascinating specimen.